This is an important question which has been set for the 22-23 assignment. American prose. American prose produced the revolution, change, appear in a vast attendance in this work, as in any that we have read. Why? Because how can we reconcile Dahmer's and Adams' antithetical views about the defense of the New England characters? The New England characters are the Americans. Dahmer raises the idea of revolution only to dismiss it. It would not be more absurd to place two of the majesties, beef eaters, to watch a father's throat. That is what has been said. Then to guard these weak infant colonies, to prevent the shaking of the British yoke. Nevertheless, the double languages of the American and the Britishers, of the subject citizen who is indecisive about his loyalties, do render the absurd intelligible. So, in a defense of New England, we need to understand the American prose very well. And it's not a very long answer, but there are many information that go with it. In the defense of the New England charters, Dahmer, Dummer, worries repeatedly about the arbitrary power of the crown, the natural insult to colonial rights, and the oppression of royal governors, even as he laughs away any possibility of an insurrection. INSURRECTION. So the dangers he cites are indeed a cause for dismay. Oppression rushes in like a tide, and bears rule, appears as a burden, literally as a yoke. It welcomes the thought of being thrown off. Dahmer's metaphors belie their surface meanings. An infant cannot commit parricide, but later, and often enough, children do revolt against their parents. Again, this is very common in America. What you think of the American culture is not the culture that we dream about in India. Here in the interstices of repudiation and anticipation, in the voice of the revolution, we find many instances of this American culture. One that is half British, half American, and in its stuttering progression, often less than aware of itself as a revolutionary discourse. Discourse means discussion of the subject. In fact, the stutter is Tutter in early revolutionary writing is the most significant literary characteristics of those writings. Overcoming it, the first indication of revolutionary success. So Benjamin Franklin, he is a famous name to be reckoned with, America's Renaissance man. Jefferson was a brilliant political philosopher, architect, naturalist, agriculturist, and political leader. He dreamt of a Western empire for liberty, for America, and secured the Louisiana Purchase. We need to understand this process better. A great deal has been made of the facility of colonial revolutionary writers in the 1760s and 1770s, and of the convenient availability to them of an English oppositional rhetoric. So disgruntled Americans like John Dickinson, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson prove a literary match for the best intellect of the era in London, and the ability is one of the first things noticed by contemporary British readers. Even the most die-hard British interpreter could identify influences and analogies in arguments advanced by the colonials, the tyranny of the subjugation, the democratic rights of any people of nation, the dangers of corruption in the constitution, and the emphasis upon public virtue. But these influences and analogies in themselves stressed enthusiasm rather than the hesitations in protest, and it is the hesitations that define the evolution of colonial protest. So until 1776, the dominant Anglo-American perspective remains against the thoughts of rupture in Bengali means parted between America and England. So writing the revolutionary, some key revolutionary text, if one needs to understand what revolutionary had taken place, if one document can explain the several hundred American pamphlets where such revolutions are mentioned for us to understand on the crisis of politics in the emergent nation between 1764 and 1776. It would be John Adams' dissertation on the Semon and feudal law. Adam commences with the assumption taken from Bishop John Tillotstowe that ignorance is the greatest cause of human misery. It's a very known fact. If you are ignorant, if you do not understand what is happening around you, you will be exploited at any cost. And concludes with the assertion that every sluice of knowledge, SLUICE, opening of knowledge, be opened and set a flowing. Just like sluice gate that opens and water rushes out, excess water. In between occurs a controlling control discovery. Only the propagation and proliferation of knowledge among the people can preserve liberty. A dissertation on the canon and feudal law uses this structure to draw out a contrast between Adam's delineation of European ignorance and the American Enlightenment. In Europe, a nexus between the clerical and feudal powers and had kept the masses in the dark about their rights until the Reformation, which incited the struggle for knowledge. The first white American, of course, established establishment in direct opposition to the feudal and clerical system, substituting the Bible and the common sense. So you say the Americans were very complex when under the colonial rule. The Bible and the common sense for the ridiculous fancies of the sanctified effluvia from episcopal fingers. That means the Americans did not fully rely on what you call religion. Inevitably, the Stamp Act of 1765 figures as the first step in a European conspiracy to take America back into the Dark Ages. So Adams' agenda, what he writes, is to seek the broadest possible popular publicity to this conspiracy. And we come to know this conspiracy to enslave all America, as well as to warn all Americans that liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people. Put in his words, Adams' aim appropriate every major pamphlet of the period. Let them all become attentive to the grounds and principles of government, ecclesiastical, that is, church, and civil. Let us study the law of nature, search into the spirit of the British Constitution, read the histories of an ancient age, contemplate the great examples of Greece and Rome, set before us the conduct of our own British ancestors, who have defended for us the inherent rights of humankind against foreign and domestic tyrants, and the usurpers against arbitrary kings and cruel priests. In short, against gates of earth and hell. The same thing did happen in our country at one point of time. We also questioned the temple priests, the pundits, that what they wanted to tell us, to explain it to us, not to keep us in the dark, but to be open to us. So it is as if these words become every writer's guide. Pamphlets after pamphlets purposely fuses the principles of the government, the meaning of the British Constitution. We all are in politics. We know how pamphlets help us to understand the politics of the country. So English and the American politics and the law of nature in an interpretation of the crisis at hand, most as well distinguish between civil and ecclesiastical frames, church frames of reference, even as they conflate religious and secular rhetoric in a political writing. So you see, everywhere there is a religious order that comes in between a real revolution. So revolutionary prose in America, American prose, the American pamphleteer who reaches the largest audience in the world of the late 1760s is John Dickey Isonini letters from Farmanian pens. He has written a lot about these people whom we call, what do we call them? We call them they are the religious preachers. So Dickinson 12 epistolary essays to my dear countrymen, originally appeared in the Pennsylvania Chronicle. Other Chronicle newspapers also issue such types of writings. People, people became conscious that they were being exploited and they had to raise their voice. So the American people started raising their voice. You know it very well, they were under the British control. They were the slaves of the British colonial rule. And they protested against the British colonial rule. He did not admit what the British said was law. British law and of writers as Tacitus, Machiavelli, Locke, and Hume. We have read about Locke, Rousseau, Locke. So these sources encourage him to assume that the social compact protects the inalienable property right. What does it teach us? The right to property is our birthright. The Americans slowly understood that they were being exploited and they wanted to come out of this exploitation. They themselves said that we were there for slaves. We won't be under the British slavery. Now the British have had the idea of forcing people to act on their slavery. The Americans wanted to come out of it. So pamphleting and writing helps them a lot to propagate what has been happening to them and how they are being exploited from their right to live. So the Americans, they understood this very well, as we also understood in our struggle for freedom. So what is required for a very good dominance, for a very good governance, is the rightful and the dutiful children who will come forward, who have received unmerited blows from a beloved parent, and they warn themselves that They will not tolerate such things forever. And the same thing happened in America. The colonial Americans came to know that they were being exploited. So the right kind of restraint is achieved through a strategy of breaks and controls. And Dickinson begins by asking for a firm rule which will help Americans achieve their freedom and will make them feel that they are free. You cannot always rule over the people and think that you are the ruler. A point of time will come when the people will go against you. So, what is required is pamphleteering, writing books and telling people that things are not in the right order. They should raise their voice and then only they can be free. The Americans understood it later. The problem of definition of the American identity is taken up pointedly in a letter 111. Dickinson explains how Americans have been exploited by the colonialists and they should come out of this exploitation. They should understand that they have a country of their own where they have the right to live and with loyalty they should live. So his love of freedom joined Americans together and made them feel that it is the duty of them to free themselves from this situation. And yet they could not free themselves because it had taken them time to do so. To free oneself from dominance, what you need is total emancipation from oneself. You have to be free from oneself. You have to understand and make people understand that you have been dominated. It is true that the Americans must have understood later. But ultimately, their prose helped them to understand that they were being dominated by the country, Britain. So, refined policies were being made. The famous Edinburgh, the politician, said at one point of time, the defined policy has ever been the parent of confusion and ever will be so long the world continues. So refined policy cannot make you free. In order to be free, one has to be free from his own self. So pamphlets help them to free them a lot. And slowly, in summary, they freed themselves. They understood that they have been exploited and they must be targeted. And before being targeted, they thought of freeing themselves first. So the Americans gradually anticipated many questions for their freedom, and ultimately they became free. It is the books and the pamphlets that made them free. In every country, in our country also, it is the pamphlets that has made us free. Pamphlet is very important to make the people understand that they are being exploited and they should immediately come out of the exploitation. The Americans did come out of the exploitation. They came out of the main target of their protest. For Parliament is not only multifaceted and multi-voiced, It is also a place of establishing one's right, not only fighting and quarreling and hitting around each other. How long can you continue with this practice? What is right has to be made right. You cannot make right wrong. The Americans did try to do it, but the British did try to do it, but the Americans protested. In this respect, Jefferson played an emerging role, main role in protesting the rights that the people were deprived of. The British became very afraid, or the colonial rulers, they thought that, see, the moment you protest, that time in every country you see, the ruler will not accept you anymore. You will be taken for granted that you are not accepted by the people. This happened in our country also, and this happened in America also. So never think Americans are very happy. No, they are not happy. We only see them from outside. Today you can see the problems that the Americans are facing. Today's war that you can see today, that is happening today with the Hamas, you see Americans are involved also in this war. They are also helping the Israelites because they have their some control over them. So this is what the Americans came to understand, that to be politically free, first and the foremost thing also is rebellion. Rebellion outright is the message of the common sense. Even the ambiguities and ambivalences and and addressing a summary view of the rights of the people is very, very important. If you are not able to express the rights of the people as we are not able to do, then you cannot be free. So what is important is relatively it has to be made clear what are the rights that one enjoys. In this respect, Thomas Paine also made some effort to make people understand their rights. We may not be knowing many things about America. We only know that they have the big buildings and everything is very classic and very interesting. But that is not the America that we think they are. They are. They have been suffering for a long time. And for suffering, if you want to overcome the suffering, you have to fight it back. Today, America has money, but that too also, there is a question whether they really have money or not. Because you say, portrait of Thomas Gibbons that we see in Washington, they say of something else, that he has pointed to the sufferings of the Americans, and Thomas Paine has been very vocal in saying that the Americans have failed to understand their liberty very later. So naturally, before such things happen, you see you need to suffer. Because you are too late in realizing that you are being harassed when you have been given the liberty to continue in that country. You see, Paine had once said that he challenges the warmest advocate for reconciliation to show advantage, and this continent can reap by being connected with Great Britain. But the question is a far cry. Great key, Bala. So we see that in America, all is not that bright as you think it is. People never tell us the darker side of things in it. We are never told the darker side of the American nation because we always look for the brighter side of it. So, among the rash of pamphlets that we come across, these pamphlets were real but nothing artificial. In the party that you do, you are based on pamphlets, isn't it? Pamphlets is something, thousand copies of which were distributed among the Americans to make them understand how they were neglected in their own country. Paine's pamphlets appeals to a wide range of American opinions angered by England. England is not a very good country in that respect. They are born colonizers. Colonization they have taught us. The Americans are also colonizing places. Wherever they get a chance, they do it. They try to bring and dissatisfaction, disinterestedness among the people and colonize them. Why? Because they know that to make people understand that they are not properly governed. So such things happen to us. And we do come across it. It happens in our country also. So everything is not bright in American history. Today also the Indians who are living there, they never tell us because they have gone to make money there. But how they are tortured. The brains are Indians, but they would never make you understand that they are. For you, there'll always be a different law. The Americans will always go for a different law for you all. But the fools in it, our country, they would not come out with the truth. The subalterns, the lowest of the lowly that we are in America, subalterns. We are not treated in proper order there. Bank of America, they don't treat us properly. They know that we are beggars, begging for alms. But that is not the truth. We are much better than them what they are. You are in your country enjoying the freedom, the right to live. But once you're in America, you do not enjoy this right. They'll never allow you to enjoy this right. They'll never allow you to think that you can do whatever you like. You have to stay like a colonial. or they will every now and then enforce new laws on you, and they will try to heckle you. Whatever is the case, the pros in the the pamphlets that were distributed among them, the British understood them very well. Actually, you may not be knowing or knowing I do not know. American was a British colony, but they could not do a lot with the British because they were very intelligent in making themselves free from their control. All this has been possible by the pamphlet clearing and the writing that they had opened up with. And today we come to know these people, these American people, because we come to know that they are not powerful as they consider themselves to be, but they have the money. So naturally, all their sentiments prove to be very powerful, but actually they don't have money. We have we are better placed than what they are. Many Indians will not agree because they earn dollars from there. But when they come to this country, devaluation of dollars do take place. Now, these truths are to be known. It is better that we know these truths. So the revolutionary pros in America changed a lot, and naturally America had to মাথা নত করতে বাধ্য হয়েছিল to the Indians and to whichever country had come into the land. They govern them, that is true, but they don't have the power to rule over them. At least they don't try to rule over India now. In this respect, maybe it is না বলে শেষ করে দিত whatever be the case is that ও আমার জন্য হুম, হুম, হুম। অ্যাকচুয়ালি ব্যাপারটা হয়েছে যে সিলেবাসটা এত বড় না যে খালি particular type questions it is better to be done than do the whole thing because you will not be able to do it, you don't have the time to do it. So this is all about the Americans that we learn today. And you have to be careful because it is the Americans will think twice to rule over us, to rule over any country. Because they have done it for a long time. People have come to know about it around the world, and then they don't believe Americans anymore.